So on my blog you'll find this revision pack. It consists of 8 pages and all going through different parts of virtue theory. Now I'm going to be doing some videos to accompany this. So in this video I just want to start by looking at what is virtue theory. So virtue theory is also known as Aristotelic ethics, and that's important to know because just like in the January paper they expected us to know Plato's theory of forms is also called ideals, we are expected to know that virtue theory is also called Aristotelic ethics. Aristotelic meaning excellence, and it all relates back to Aristotle's famous quote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence then is not an act but a habit, and that sort of summarizes the whole theory in my opinion. Now, why virtue theory is so revolutionary is because it has an agent-centered approach, which, as far as I'm aware, no other theories managed to do it in such a popular way as Aristotle has. Now, what this means is that it focuses on the agent, the person, not the action. It tells you what kind of person to be, not what actions to complete. So what Aristotle says is that the virtues aren't the same for everybody. Okay, what virtues you have, you should be sort of acquiring, somebody else should not be. That's why he did not put a rule-based sort of ethical system. He focused on a virtue-centered and person-centered ethical theory for this reason. So now let's look at the principles of Aristotle's theory. So if we go back to his theory of causality, I have a video on this too. He distinguishes between the 4 causes. Now the final cause, the purpose, he says for us humans, is eudaimonia. Now this means human flourishing. This is the highest societal position. This is when society is performing to its maximum ability. Now, I'm just going to go on a tangent a bit here. In this revision pack that you'll find on my blog, I have put, I can't remember what page it is. I'll just go to, it's the page section eudaimonia and the doctrine of the mean. On this page, I have written about this eudaimonia element of the theory influencing Adam Smith. I just want you all to be aware that this is my opinion and it's not something you need to know, and it's not really something you have to agree with. It's just my personal theory. So now let me continue. So that's what he said, eudaimonia. And the way, the efficient cause, the by in which we're going to achieve this final cause is by acquiring the virtues. So what are virtues? Virtues are positive character traits. And there are 2 types of virtues that Aristotle distinguishes between: moral and intelligent. So moral virtues, there are 12 of them, and they are ones which are acquired through doing, practice, habit. So these would include like courage, temperance, liberty, witness. But they also are sometimes called the golden mean. This is because the actual virtue lies between 2 vices. This is how we know what a virtue is. And these 2 vices are extreme forms of this one character trait. So if we look at the virtue of courage, if you are very, very courageous and you're the vice of excess, you're said to have rashness. Whereas if you had the vice of deficiency, which is not enough courage, you might be called a coward. So like that, it can also be called a golden mean. And this aspect of the golden mean being in the middle and the 2 vices being on the side is called the doctrine of the golden mean. Now, intellectual virtues, we don't need to know as much sort of detail, if you like, about them, but they are virtues which I learned through a teacher, because for Aristotle a pedagogy was extremely important. And I personally, for the exam, you have primary intelligent virtues and secondary intelligence virtues. I would only remember the primary because you don't need to quote all of them. It's like you don't need to quote all 12 moral virtues, and there is a sort of a mnemonic which I use to remember, and that's called whisper. So you know, like the chocolate bar whisper. So W being wisdom, I being intelligence, S being scientific knowledge, P being practical wisdom, and A being art. So whisper. It's a good way to remember. And many scholars sort of compare this process of acquiring virtues to one of playing a musical instrument, because you need a teacher. You know, okay, vast majority of time, if you're like born to be virtuous, you'll do it on your own. If you're born to play the piano, or natural musician, you'll do it on your own. Vast majority of times, you do need a teacher. Once you've actually learned to play an instrument, once you've actually got the virtues, you can enjoy the rewards, you can enjoy seeing society flourish, you can enjoy it. And it's very difficult, you know, it's very difficult to become virtuous or learn to play the piano, but it is possible. Now, for Aristotle, although we all have the potential to become virtuous, only two sorts of people will accomplish this, he says, and those are gentlemen and philosophers. Now, the modern take on this is that the only people who achieve these are the people who have external factors which help them. So this may mean people who have already good parents, who have some sort of financial support, they're not completely, you know, living in poverty, those kinds of things it would be. So now I want to talk about modern virtue theory. Now, there's about 6 thinkers I've written about in this pack. So I'm just going to go through those thinkers. So firstly, we have Anscombe, Elizabeth Anscombe. Now, what she did is she observed society, and she said that society was being secular, so we cannot put a moral system based that if you do not do this, if you do not follow the divine law, you will be punished. Because people don't believe in God to begin with, then how on earth can we have a system like that? She says it had to change, and virtue theory was the best way of changing. It doesn't rely on it, and you know, it's just a good theory. And Anscombe didn't really sort of, if you like, add and embellish his theory. What she did is she more sort of discredited other theories. So she said, no, we can't have Kant. How can you say that do not murder or do not false promises right for everyone? Situations change. So she did that kind of thing. Nussbaum is the most sort of controversial modern virtue ethicist, because what she did is she interprets the virtues as being absolutes. It's important to recognize that not all sort of philosophers would agree with that, hardly any, because she sees this as an absolutist theory. So if we have a moral virtue of being modest, then in her opinion, it is like an imperative, you must be modest. So, you know, like you have thou must not kill, she said it would be thou must be modest. Or if you was like courage, it would be thou must be courage. And if you had the vice of coward, you might say thou must not be a coward. It's like that. She looks at it like that, so there's parallels with the Decalogue. The third guy was Maclntyre. Now, he had a lot to say. He says context is important for ethics. You cannot just set hard and cold rules like Kant. And like religious ethics, one thing that's really he didn't like about it is that it's hard sometimes to apply these old ancient rules to our modern society. The great thing about virtue theory is it changes with time. So you had the Homeric virtues such as physical strength, and then when Aristotle's time, they had the virtue of friendship. It shows from physical strength the virtues changed to friendship. It shows a shift in thinking as well. He differentiates between two types of good in the world: internal and external. Internal good would be I'm giving money to charity, this will benefit charity, is intrinsic. And external good would be that by giving money to charity, if I've influenced all my friends sort of to give money to charity. Philipa Foot is really sad. She died last month. She was a co-founder of Oxfam, and for her, ethics was all about making the world a better place, not dry theorizing. And she said the virtue theory not only kind of helps the individual, helps society, and it looks at the bigger picture. Slote, he interprets eudaimonia as being the well-being. He says humans need it. It's like sufficient. It's necessary for their well-being. Ben Franklin was a utilitarianism, but he made a comment saying that virtue theory is not just virtues are not just important for virtue theory, they're actually important for if you want to be utilitarian or anything else. Hence, this theory is like more important to a certain extent than utilitarianism. Sorry I rushed to the end, I'm running out of time, but in my next video we'll look at the evaluation of virtue theory. Thank you for watching. Please visit my blog.